You're listening to a podcast from the South China Morning Post.
Let me tell you something about your phone. Actually, let me tell you two things. Have a look at the phone you're holding right now and think about where it was made. There's a 90% chance it was made in southern China. If you're holding a Samsung, it might have been manufactured in South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, or Brazil. But the software that makes your phone do stuff, the operating system, the OS, it doesn't matter if it's Android or Apple. It only comes from one place, the United States. Now, before you add me on Twitter or go crazy in the comments on our YouTube page, I know there's BlackBerry, and of course, a shout out to the old school if you're still using a Nokia phone right now. But the reality is, for the past 7 or 8 years, in a world that currently has 3.8 billion smartphones, there are only two kinds of operating systems, both from the US. Or there was. Now, things have changed. But just like your phone contract, conditions apply. Welcome to the latest edition of Inside China. My name is Xinmei Shen. I'm a reporter on the tech desk for the South China Morning Post here in Hong Kong. In this episode, you're going to hear more about something called Harmony, the new operating system developed and released by Huawei. Now, Harmony was originally released in August 2019, but it was only a couple of weeks ago that it really made news, because Harmony is now available for all smartphones and tablets made by Huawei. And just in case you need reminding, Huawei is the biggest manufacturer of smartphones and tablets in the world. Last year, Huawei outbuilt and outsold Samsung to become the world's #1 maker of smartphones. Or at least, it was the world's #1. The world has changed for China's largest telecom company, and the new operating system is just part of the story. With me is John Artman, tech editor for the South China Morning Post. Hi, John.
Hey, Xinmei.
So before we start with where we are, let me ask you about how we got here. Let's start in 2019. It's the Trump era. It's all angry tweets and anti-China rhetoric. And the U.S. announces a ban on all American technology to Huawei and effectively bans it from using the Android system and accessing the Google Store. Is that what drove Huawei to develop Harmony?
Well, I mean, Huawei has been under the microscope from U.S. policymakers for a long, long time, since as early as the early 2010s. For me, it was always kind of interesting paying attention to kind of what was coming out of U.S. Congress at the time, because they were making a lot of noise about Huawei's threats to national security in terms of telecommunications networks and spying. And then, of course, Edward Snowden leaks all of his stuff, and I think everyone kind of paying attention was like, oh, okay, now we understand why the United States was so concerned about Huawei. You know, as early as 2012, Huawei had already been considering to create their own operating system. However, Harmony was first envisioned actually to be an IoT platform. And so, you know, now we see that a lot of the headlines are about the smartphone side of Harmony. But in many ways, it actually is more of an IoT platform. That being said, you know, one of the big reasons they started development was because in 2012, they were worried about being potentially cut off from Android. And the thing is, you have to remember, for Chinese smartphone companies, in essence, they're kind of already selling two different products. And so if you're Huawei, Xiaomi, or Oppo, you have the hardware between, let's say, the Chinese market, the Indian market, and the European market is basically going to be the same. It's going to be the same model. But the difference is in the software already. And so if you're a Chinese customer buying a phone that comes with Android in China already, before all these sanctions and before the ban, you know, Android was not coming with Google Play services. And Google Play services is kind of the underlying framework for on Android that kind of connects, you know, all the Google stuff. So the Google Assistant, Gmail, Calendar, App Store, all this stuff, right? So for Huawei, when we look at kind of broadly speaking, being cut off from Android was only kind of a big deal internationally. Domestically, interestingly enough, they have been doing okay. But when we look specifically at Harmony, in many ways, yes, it is a kind of a reaction to being cut off from Android. But this process was begun much earlier than 2019, and Harmony is actually a little bit more than just a smartphone operating system.
So, John, talk us through the Harmony OS. Is there anything specifically different about the Harmony system that's got people talking? For example, you mentioned that it's originally designed for IoT use.
Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of big questions about the operating system. I think we can kind of break it up into two different sides. One is kind of the market side of it. And the other is the technical side of it. And so if we look at the market side of it, one of the big questions is how does this fit into Huawei's overall strategy? And also, when it comes to smartphones, will other smartphone makers actually start adopting it? On the technical side, there's some pretty big questions about what exactly Harmony actually is. So as I mentioned, there's kind of two versions of Harmony. There's the IoT version, and then there's the smartphone version. A lot of attention is being paid to the smartphone version because smartphones are everywhere, and everyone kind of pays attention to this. And Android and Apple have dominated when it comes to the smartphone operating systems. BlackBerry tried and failed, unfortunately. Windows and Microsoft tried and failed, and so we effectively have a duopoly between Android and iOS at the moment. So there was a lot of speculation about whether or not Harmony could potentially challenge this. So it was getting a lot of attention globally and domestically in the developer community. But there's a lot of questions about what exactly it is. Is it just, quote unquote, another version of Android, or is it something completely different? And the thing is, we don't know. Huawei has opened part of the source code to the open source community, but if you go on China's GitHub called Gitty, you can go and you can download the source code for Harmony. But they've also, as with any company, they also have some of the code is closed source. So some developers globally and domestically have been asking this question. Huawei has said that they have used some bits of Android, part of the open source bits of Android in there, but they claim that it's just to ease the transition from Android to Harmony. They've created a conversion kit, so that Android developers can easily convert their Android apps onto Harmony, therefore hopefully making it easier and more compelling for users to actually start using Harmony on their smartphone.
John, so who is this system for? Is it an alternative to Apple and Android, or is this about a Chinese-specific OS to replace Android and cut off Google products?
Well, if it was a Chinese replacement for Android, then you would expect that other Chinese smartphone makers would be pretty enthusiastic about adopting it. But the case is actually quite the opposite. So when Huawei launched their 2.0 of Harmony, which is now 100% ready for smartphones as well as smart devices, the only partners that they were actually able to show off at the launch were smart device makers and wearable makers. No other smartphone company has actually signed on. Not even the smartphone company that they spun off last year as an independent company from Huawei is actually going to be using Harmony. So I think that, again, there has been a lot of talk about it being some kind of replacement, but I think if we're looking at kind of market realities, it's just not happening. Again, if you're Xiaomi or Oppo, maybe it would make sense to have something like this in your Chinese specific devices. But if you're a customer in India or in Europe, and you go into a Xiaomi store or you go into an electronics store and you want to buy a new phone, it's not going to be an Apple, but you want to buy a new phone, and so you see that there's 3 different phones, 2 have Android, 1 has Harmony. What's actually going to get you to use that Harmony device? All your friends are using Android. All the cool apps and social networks and games that they're playing are available on Android and iOS already. Are they available on Harmony? Are developers actually building applications for the Harmony platform. And so for any operating system, I mean, this is why Windows failed with their phone. They were not able to build a developer community around the operating system. And these days you have developers who only develop on iOS. You have developers who only develop for Android. Some do cross-platform, but you add in a third option, and the amount of time and energy it takes to actually, make an app in the first place, much less make it kind of work across platforms, it's not going to be worth it for a lot of developers. And so when we're looking kind of broadly speaking, the only, clear direction that Harmony is going in right now is on smart devices. So TVs, refrigerators, wearables, Huawei-owned products. And then, of course, there's a really big opportunity when it comes into the IoT space. And so when we're talking about IoT, right, we're talking about basically anything that you could possibly think of, anything physical. The vision for IoT is to connect that to the internet somehow. And so if Huawei can kind of be a first mover in this, if they can be a leader in China for the IoT industry, that's a really, really big opportunity for them. But it's not necessarily going to become reality anytime soon.
So not even Chinese smartphone makers are using Harmony. It's starting to sound like Huawei is making a pivot here. We've been referring to this company as the world's biggest smartphone maker, but it sounds like it's a change of direction.
Well, the thing is about the world's largest smartphone maker, it definitely is not anymore. We're seeing the shipment numbers for Huawei phones really falling off a cliff. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. If you look at some of our recent reporting, you'll see Huawei's share of the global smartphone market is decreasing rapidly. In China, it's not as bad, but it's still pretty bad. And so when we're looking at Huawei kind of holistically, one of the big questions for them is they're being cut off from selling their equipment to telecommunications networks around the world. They're smart. They can no longer make smartphones because they do not have access to the intellectual property or the actual components needed to make them. This is, one of the biggest parts of their business, and which is now floundering significantly. So Huawei, they're casting about for a new direction. They're trying different things. They have a lot of money. It's not like they're going broke anytime soon. And so they have money, which means they have time. And so right now they're really trying to figure out where they can take their business in a new direction. So they're exploring a few different things. One of which is enterprise services, so helping companies to build their networks in their offices, but also helping China's manufacturers to really upgrade their entire manufacturing process, and even looking at even more dangerous industries like coal mining. So bringing 5G into the coal mining process, so that there's more automation, there's more data, and making it safer and more efficient at the same time. They're also going into smart vehicles. So they are currently partnering with a Chinese electric vehicle company that they're selling these models inside the Huawei flagship stores throughout the country. There's been a lot of speculation about whether or not Huawei is going into cars. They've said many times that they are not. Instead, they are partnering with car makers. And they're also exploring kind of smart transportation solutions. So bringing in 5G and networking technology onto China's roads. And again, most of this really is focused on the domestic market. And so when we look at Harmony, how does Harmony fit into all of this? Well, as I said before, in my mind, IoT is a big opportunity for them. IoT right now, it's very fragmented. You have a lot of small companies doing a lot of different things. There is not really a big player who is going into this area very strongly, and so for Huawei, they're starting off with this operating system, and so for IoT, I mean, like any device, you need something that mediates between the software and the hardware. That's the operating system. And so on the one hand, they can bring this IoT strategy into their other businesses, in particular kind of enterprise services and public services. But then on the other hand, they can also license it and sell it to smart device makers and other IoT makers. On top of that, as I mentioned before, they've made some of the source code open source. And so this is actually pretty significant. Huawei is perhaps the largest company making this kind of software open source. And so if they can convince developers, again, probably mostly Chinese, if they can convince developers to really begin developing on that, maybe, an IoT startup, instead of trying to, convert Linux to their own use, they can just kind of out of the box take Harmony, maybe make some changes, and then start using that. And so when we're looking at, again, kind of, over the next maybe 10 to 20 years, it's difficult to say what exactly Huawei is going to look like, but we can see kind of some of the directions that they're experimenting with right now.
So, John, Huawei has been called a national champion of Chinese technology. What is the bigger story here in terms of in the backdrop of the U.S.-China competition? Well,
so again, as we mentioned at the very beginning, a lot of this started for Huawei in 2019, or at least some of the immediate impacts. And we really saw kind of the power that the United States government had if it wanted to severely cripple an economy or a specific company. So far, they've only really focused on Huawei. Obviously, there was this case with ZTE, slightly different in some senses, but under the Trump administration, the rhetoric, and the pressure really ratcheted up. There was a lot of talk with Obama under the Obama administration, especially as he was leaving, about the need to take a strong stance against China. And a lot more. There's a lot more strong voices coming from the United States Congress, as well as other public figures in media, newspaper, et cetera, et cetera. So with Donald Trump, again, we saw something that in a certain sense was probably inevitable. If Clinton had won the election, we might have seen something quite similar. But with Trump, I mean, it was just so unpredictable. He could go on Twitter. We would wake up here in Hong Kong to a tweet about TikTok, and we're like, what the heck is actually going on? And so covering that story for us was a bit of a roller coaster. And so when Joe Biden won the election for American president, there were a lot of questions about kind of, what's his policy going to be? How is he going to continue this quote unquote tech war with China? Will he actually continue the tech war with China? And so I think, everyone, including Huawei, was in a bit of a wait and see moment, seeing what would happen. And so we're about 6 months in. And the policy is, in fact, becoming clearer and clearer. So on the questions of TikTok and WeChat, as an American, I just want to say that this is an example of our system actually working because the TikTok bans and the WeChat bans were deemed, in effect, unconstitutional. And Joe Biden has said that he's going to completely repeal those. But he will. His administration has started a broad security review of Chinese or foreign controlled applications, is the way that they put it. And then with Huawei, well, they're very much a casualty of all this, and it doesn't seem like that's going to change anytime soon. The U.S. Senate recently passed a bill. It's now in the U.S. House of Representatives, and one clause in that bill effectively says that Huawei cannot be taken off the entity list, which means that any sanctions placed on them, it's not going to go away without the explicit permission of the Congress. And so what that's done, and so originally, the sanctions and the entity list, all of this was from the White House, so the executive branch. And now the legislative branch is saying, you know what, Mr. President, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter who wins the next election. If you want to, give Huawei a break, you got to ask us first. And, if Joe Biden decides to ask Congress, they're probably going to say no.
Okay, John, thanks for your time. That's all we have for you this week on Inside China. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, you can find the latest news and updates on everything about Huawei and China's big tech companies on the South China Morning Post website, scmp.com. And in case you missed it, don't forget some of our previous episodes about China's big tech companies. Back in May, we brought you a special episode on Beijing's antitrust crackdown. And before that, we looked at ByteDance launching an IPO on the U.S. stock exchange. My name is Xinmei Shen. It's great to be back on the Inside China podcast. Stay safe, and we'll be back next week with another episode.
As critical news stories emerging from China continue to shape lives and business around the world, the weekly SCMP Global Impact newsletter brings you expert analyses and insights on the economics of COVID-19, society, technology, and the environment. Sign up to receive your weekly email at scmp.com/newsletters.